So, hi everyone, welcome back to the Hegel Courses channel. We have been away for a while, but now we're back. I'm going to have a little conversation with my young friend from Korea, Sehwan, and I will be talking about sensuous certainty on the basis of a NotebookLM audio file. So that is an AI-created conversation about sensuous certainty, the first chapter of the phenomenology. Let me first welcome my friend. So let's dive into this. This is a NotebookLM file. You're familiar with that format. So we'll listen to it and try to figure out what it actually means. So this would be the way the screen would look like. Let's start without further ado, and I hope that the audio will work fine.
Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we're really zeroing in, getting right into one of the foundational moments in Hegel's phenomenology of spirit, specifically the dialectic of sensuous certainty. Now, if you've followed our previous discussions or know your Hegel basics, you'll know consciousness is always on this journey. Our goal today is pretty focused, though. We want to track consciousness right at the beginning, like in its infancy, as it tries to figure out where truth actually is.
That is one of the first comments I need to make. The program talks about the journey of consciousness as if it is sort of a real development. But as we have already discussed in earlier sessions, it's not about, let's say, a real psychological progress. It's about a dialectical or logical development. But they talk about this journey, right? That's sort of the way that in American circles, the phenomenology is looked at, like a journey, like a development in reality of consciousness. But that's surely not the case in the phenomenology.
Is it in that immediate thing right in front of us? Or is truth, well, always more complicated, more mediated?
That's a great way to put it. And since you, our listener, are already up to speed on dialectics generally, we can skip the basics and dive right into this specific movement. Sensuous certainty, this first chapter, it's consciousness just bumping into the world for the first time, really.
Right.
It assumes truth is simple, immediate. But the way that immediacy is structured, well, it means that certainty collapses. The second consciousness tries to actually hold on to it. It's quite profound because it shows even the simplest act of knowing is, fundamentally complex.
Okay, so the big question is, what makes that seemingly simplest claim, I know this thing right here, what makes it so philosophically shaky? Why does it fall apart?
Well, it starts with what Hegel calls meinen, which we usually translate as meaning or sometimes opinion. It's consciousness grappling with raw, immediate sensory input.
Like just seeing something, feeling something.
Exactly. Consciousness is totally confident that the absolute truth, self-contained and simple, is locked within that singular object. Right here, right now. It feels unmediated, like pure being.
Okay, let's make that concrete. If I'm looking at, say, this microphone right here, my sensuous certainty says, I know this. Now, here, I'm trying to grasp the microphone as just itself, purely singular, separate from everything else.
And that's precisely where the whole thing starts to unravel, because the very words consciousness has to use, this now here, they turn out to be universal, even though the intention is purely singular.
Wait, hang on. If I say the microphone is here, surely here points to this specific spot. How is that universal?
Well, think about it. Here is totally relative, isn't it? If you move over there, here moves with you. What was here is now there.
Oh, okay.
The word here itself doesn't contain the specific sensory information of this place. It's a placeholder that works for any place the speaker happens to be. Same with now. You say, it is now 3 p.m.
Right.
By the time you finish the sentence, it's a second past 3 p.m. The specific now is vanished, but the concept, the word now, it just keeps on working, applying to any moment.
Yeah.
It's universal.
So Hegel's point is the object of that immediate sense, consciousness is, as he puts it, only one which has disappeared. That this is fundamentally unstable. It just flickers out of existence the moment we try to pin it down with language.
Exactly. It's defined only by its fleeting relationship to the observer, and that relationship is always changing. Consciousness intends to grasp the singular pure particular, but in the very act of trying to express this certainty, even with the simplest words like this, it produces a universal. It can't help it. And that's a huge failure for this initial stage of consciousness.
So the most immediate, supposedly simple truth actually depends on these highly abstract universal concepts just to be spoken about at all.
That's the core insight.
Yeah.
And it forces consciousness into this, well, this cycle. It tries again, okay, this time I'll get the pure this. But every time that this evaporates, canceled out by the universality inherent in the attempt to grasp it.
But it's not just gone, right? This is where sublation comes in.
Right.
Okay, so that leads into the second stage of the whole development. I think this is a pretty good summary of that first chapter, the first part of that chapter. Sense certainty, trying to express the singular this and now with a consciousness that totally corresponds to that. That is also a this and now. Actually, they skipped that part. We discussed it a couple of times, that the certainty or the consciousness is then also defined as a this and here and now. This here and now, grasping the this here and now, for instance, the microphone or whatever they want to talk about. So I think this is pretty good, but they focus only on the object of sensuous certainty in this case, and they sort of skipped the interesting notion that in trying to grasp the here and now, the immediate object, I also perform, my consciousness performs as a this here and now. There's no conceptual richness in the subject that trying to grasp the this here and now. It's also simply a this here and now. But doesn't seem to matter that much. This is really essential because sensuous certainty tries to find its truth in the object in the first place. So it's a pretty good strategy by NotebookLM to focus on this part of it.
It's aufgehoben, canceled, yes, because it failed, but also preserved and lifted up. Because the necessity of that failure, the movement itself, pushes consciousness toward the next stage.
Yeah, so that's the whole idea of the bestimmte Negation, the determinate negation. Negation doesn't mean that you totally destroy specific consciousness, but consciousness then produces a new definition of itself and its object.
It has to realize truth can't be found in this vanishing individual moment.
Okay, so let's follow that movement. If the pure singular, this just slips through our fingers, where does consciousness go next to find something solid?
It moves to the next logical step, perception, or Wahrnehmung.
Oh, I didn't notice that before, but it skips the second and the third part of the dialectic of sensuous certainty. That is to say, the second step is to put the truth of the whole thing within the subject. It depends, everything depends on my perspective, my point of view. And then thirdly, it sees the combination of the two, and a lot of moments of the here and now kept together by me. So the sensuous multiplicity, which is one and many at the same time, which is subjective and objective at the same time. That's the third step, and that brings us to perception. But they don't explain the transitional element, the third step, and they don't explain the first negation, the second step, that everything is subjective. But okay, let's forgive them. Let's forgive them and keep on listening.
Consciousness figures, okay, maybe the object isn't just a fleeting sensation. Maybe it's a stable thing, something that lasts, something that has properties.
So the sensuous individual has to develop into the sensuous universal, because now we're trying to categorize it, give it features.
Exactly. It's trying to grasp the object, not just as this, but as a this, a thing with characteristics. But, this is where consciousness runs smack into an even deeper contradiction. The thing itself becomes a kind of battleground.
How so? What's the conflict within the thing?
Well, consciousness tries to hold on to two conflicting ideas about the thing at the same time. It seems simple, but it's actually quite tricky. First, the object has to be a one, a single, unified, exclusive thing. When I'm perceiving the microphone, I see one object. It's distinct from the desk, distinct from my notes. It's this unity, this exclusiveness that makes it this thing.
Okay, that makes sense. One thing.
But the thing is also known through its properties, its color, its material, its shape, its weight, and properties are inherently universal, aren't they? Blackness isn't exclusive to this microphone. It applies to cars, shirts, the night sky. Solidity applies to rocks, tables, you name it.
Right. The properties seem to spread the thing out into general categories.
Precisely. And Hegel has this wonderful way of describing it.
I have a bit of a problem with this idea of general categories. The idea is that the properties of a thing are actually, each of them, singular sensuous experiences. And let's say the blackness is just like in sensuous experience, sensuous certainty. This is black. The shape, this is, let's say, rectangular or whatever. So the whole interesting idea in Hegel is that the properties of a thing can be considered as the object of sensuous certainty. And the black right in front of me, the white right in front of me. But to use the term categories, I think is a mistake. They aren't categories, they are simply qualities. Huge difference. A category is like one and substance and thing and many and all of that. But just an element of perception is a quality like black and round and stuff like that. To put them all into this interesting relationship, that's the sensuous universal or the thing of perception, you have one and many. You have the one thing with many sensuous experiences, that is to say, with many characteristics or properties. That is totally correct. But I think it's a mistake to use the word category here. Brown is not a category. It's universal, sure, but not a category.
He says, the thing is perceived as an also. It's like an indifferent passive collection, a bundle of these universal properties or matters just sitting together, an aggregate.
Okay, like an also this and also that.
Kind of, yeah. But at the very same time, the thing must be a one, an exclusive unity defined by negation, meaning it excludes opposite properties. It's black, not white, solid, not liquid. And it excludes other things. It asserts its individuality.
Wow, okay. So consciousness is trying to see it both ways simultaneously, as just a loose bundle of general qualities, the also, and as this tightly defined, unique individual, the one. That sounds, well, contradictory.
It is, and that's the engine of the dialectic here. If consciousness focuses just on the properties, the blackness, the hardness, the cylindrical shape, the thing dissolves into a mere collection of universals. It becomes what Hegel calls a community in general.
That sounds a bit like the empiricist view, right? Locke or Hume, seeing objects as just bundles of ideas or impressions.
Exactly. That's part of what Hegel is critiquing. If you only see the also, the properties, you lose the object's unity. But then, the moment consciousness tries to define the thing, this black thing is hard, not soft, is here, not there, the necessity of the one reasserts itself. It becomes an exclusive, unified identity again, pushing out other possibilities.
So it's caught in a loop, pulled towards seeing a universal collection by the properties, then snapped back to seeing a singular unit by the nature of the thing itself.
Perfectly put. It cycles between seeing the object as a mere bundle of abstract attributes, the also, and seeing it as a distinct, unified entity, the one. It can't rationally hold both together in this framework. The property demands universality, but the object's identity demands singularity. That contradiction forces the next move.
And that failure, the inability to reconcile the one and the also in perception, is crucial. It tells consciousness that the truth of the object can't just be found on the surface, either in the raw sensation of this or in this contradictory structure of external properties.
Right. The instability, the inherent contradiction in perception mandates a shift. Consciousness has to realize that the object's unity must come from somewhere deeper, something more stable than just how it appears externally.
So it's not just a collection of properties pasted together, and it's not just a bare, empty one. The unity must be internal. How does consciousness make that leap to realizing the mediated universal is its true object?
So they're talking about the transition to Kraft und Verstand, and the final chapter of the final part of the first chapter. So they're skipping again the dialectic movement between the second and third stage. So they're going from the first stage to the third stage immediately. That's okay. That's a decision that certainly an AI can make, not to get bogged down in the very detailed explanations that Hegel gives, talking about the transition to the second stage in all cases. So what is lacking here, again, just like in the previous discussion, is the idea that the alternation between the two. So we have established the thing is one and it has many properties. So what can I describe this oneness to? Is it the subject giving this unity to this bag of multiple characteristics or properties? Or is it the other way around? Is something there in reality one and the same, this one thing? And is the multiplicity of characteristics or properties just something subjective? And it's this alternation between two possible positions that drives the dialectic. So first step is to see it in the object, and then it's contradictory. Then second step, to divide it, to take the contradiction in this sense that the subject adds the unity. Second element there, the subject adds the multiplicity. Doesn't work. And then you get the third step. It has to be both one and multiple. How do you express that? How do you explain that? It must be at the same time objective and subjective. So that the thing must be in itself one with many properties, and the thing must be within my mind one with many properties. It has to be both a Kantian subjective category, but it also has to be the property of the thing in itself, because I really want to talk about reality. I'm not talking about figments of my imagination or structures of consciousness that is purely subjective. So they jump a little bit, but it's okay if we can add in our session here the details, more of the details of this second step that Hegel lets consciousness go through.
The core realization is that the thing's unity isn't just a given fact, nor is it just a bundle. It's mediated through its internal essence, its underlying nature. The focus shifts from just listing external properties to understanding the internal principle that holds them together.
And this is where Hegel really takes aim at his predecessors, like the empiricists and even Kant, isn't it? They tended to see the object as reducible to a list of property universals, like saying a cat is just the sum of furry, four-legged meows, etc.
Precisely. Hegel says that's fundamentally mistaken. An object for him is primarily an exemplification of what he calls a substance universal. Think of it like a species form, the essence of cat or dog or human. This substance universal provides an irreducible, holistic unity.
So we don't really grasp what a cat is by just adding up its properties. We grasp it when we recognize the underlying form, the catness it embodies.
Exactly. That substance universal is the key. It's what constitutes the object's essential nature. Hegel talks about it as the soul of the subject in philosophical judgment. It's the concept that unites all those abstract categories like furry, four-legged within the specific individual, giving it an internal structure that you can't just dissolve into parts.
So the universal we finally arrive at isn't just a property like redness, but the fundamental essence of the thing, like roseness, which explains why it has the properties it does.
You've got it. When consciousness grasps this substance universal, this species form, then it understands the object's essential nature.
That's a very powerful development in the phenomenology, and the substance universal they call it. But it's the idea that the oneness and the multiplicity are both part of the thing itself. So if the thing can be called the substance, then substance implies predicates, implies characteristics or properties. So what if the things in the world are actually like substances? They have this unity and they have the manifold at the same time. So this is preparing the transition to the idea, well, what about the relationship between my subjectivity and a world that is filled with these substance universals? The substance universal also has this second element, and that, of course, if you call something a dog, then dog is the substance of this thing in front of me, the thing of perception. It's a dog because it has these properties, but dog in itself also refers to a whole species of animals. So there is the universal side to that. I think Notebook is spot on in deciphering let's say, the character of the consciousness that we get through the transition, but is not too careful with talking about the nature of the transition. It's not too preoccupied with the logical questions. It might have something to do with the sources that I gave it. Not many sources, not many commentaries on Hegel's phenomenology will try to explain all of that. So NotebookLM might be limited a little bit because I only gave it the text of Hegel itself. Let's see how it develops.
The object is no longer just an aggregate, as Hegel puts it, of external bits and pieces. It possesses a real ontological unity, a structure that makes the whole more than the sum of its parts. That inherent unity is its truth, mediated through its essence.
That's a really significant shift from the immediate, unstable this through the contradictory thing of perception, finally arriving at this idea of an internal, mediated substance universal. Okay, let's step back. What does this whole journey mean in the context of, say, the philosophical debates Hegel was engaging with?
Well, it's a direct challenge, especially to the Kantian framework that was dominant. Kant, in a simplified sense, argued that the raw data from our senses is kind of chaotic. It's the mind, the cognizing subject, that imposes unity and structure onto it through categories and synthesis.
Right. So for Kant, the structure we perceive in the world largely comes from us, from our mental apparatus.
Yes. Hegel flips that completely. By tracing this necessary path of consciousness, showing it must fail with the this, must get tangled in the one, and must ultimately arrive at the substance universal.
Hegel argues that the structure, the unity, the rationality is already inherent in the object itself.
So consciousness isn't imposing the structure, it's discovering the necessary logical structure that the object already possesses.
That's the claim. The truth, the rational structure, is embedded in the world's own logic, not just projected onto it by our finite minds. It frees the external world in a way from being merely raw material for our subjective organizing principles.
That's a really powerful reorientation. Okay, so to recap, we started with that seductively simple this of sensuous certainty, saw it immediately break down. Then we moved to perception, where the object became this contradictory thing, torn between being a one and an also. And finally, consciousness was forced to recognize the object's true identity as an exemplification of a mediated substance universal. The journey is always from that insufficient immediacy to the richer, necessary truth found in mediation. Absolutely. And maybe here's the final thought for you, the listener, to chew on. If even the simplest object we encounter through our senses, a pencil, a cup, whatever, if even that requires this complex internal dialectic, this movement from immediate appearance to mediated essence, to be truly known, what does that suggest about how we should approach understanding much larger, far more complex entities?
Like what?
Well, think about things like the state, or ethical life, or social institutions, or even our own self-identity. If the truth of the simple object lies in its internal movement and mediated structure, doesn't that imply that trying to grasp these incredibly complex realities through simple, immediate definitions or snapshots is bound to fail?
Okay, good point. Good point, I think, at the end. I noticed that Notebook is always trying to give some kind of very pragmatic application of the whole, like in a sermon. This is the lesson that we can draw from our discussion, etc. And Notebook does the same. So that's a rhetorical device, rhetorical structure that it always uses. Okay, so how will we apply that to the way we understand the state and stuff like that? Well, understanding that it is both a very complicated structure. That's important, that it has an inner dialectic and a structure, logical structure. But on the other hand, that this logical structure actually is not part of our subjective understanding of it, but actually part of the reality of it. It's the reality that provides us with the logical categories with which we need to understand it. And at the same time, we have a subjective process in which we define and apply these categories. It's both at the same time, which is the perfect way to look at very general knowledge of the world, which is the third chapter, Kraft und Erscheinung, Kraft und Verstand, rather, so force and understanding, that they didn't mention. So maybe I should rephrase my prompt next time and ask them specifically to also include that chapter. They sort of And that is what a prompt can do if you use AI. If you don't mention it explicitly, there might be a tendency not to mention it. Even though in the development of the content, they need to sort of come close to it, but they never mention it. They call it substance universal instead of using the word kraft or power, which actually is one of the best examples of such a substance universal. Because, of course, when we talk about power or kraft, force, let's call it force. Force is at the same time something that I need to observe in order for it to be there, like electricity, but it certainly is also something that is happening in reality. And it's not a thing of perception. It's not something that has properties, and it's certainly not a sensuous quality like red or just not a here and now. So it's a perfect example of something that can only be discovered by a very complicated application of my reasoning facility, and at the same time a very complex reality in itself, and they have to be in harmony with each other for me to understand it or to explain what is going on. But they don't call it Kraft und Verstand in this notebook conversation. But I think I like it as a kind of an introduction to the problems that we are facing. We are reading now the whole chapter in detail, but you see how complicated even the summary can be, let alone when we dive into the text itself of the phenomenology. So, what is the thing that you get from this the most? Did you like the conversation that Notebook produced? Thank you for watching and listening to it. Hope to see you soon with the next, well, challenging and interesting chapter of the phenomenology. So, bye-bye.